My wedding was a deal. The morning of my wedding smelled like white roses and something quietly dying. I woke before the sun rose, before the house stirred, before the carefully arranged lies could stand up and put on their silk dresses. The room was still dim, painted in soft gray light, and for a moment I forgot what day it was. I lay there staring at the ceiling, tracing the faint cracks that looked like rivers on a map, and I wondered if I could float away along them. Then I heard my mother's heels in the hallway. Each step was precise, controlled, determined, and I remembered. Today I was marrying a man I did not love. The air felt heavier after that thought, like someone had placed a hand gently over my mouth. My phone lay on the nightstand. I reached for it instinctively, hoping, like a child, that there would be a message that could undo everything. A message from him. There wasn't. Only a notification from the wedding planner and 3 unread texts from my mother reminding me to drink water, smile naturally, and not embarrass the family. I closed my eyes. His last message was still there from 3 nights ago. Are you really going through with it? I hadn't answered. Because what could I say? Yes. I am going to marry someone else so my father's company doesn't collapse. Yes. I am trading the rest of my life for the debts of a man who raised me to believe love mattered. Yes. I am choosing security over the only person who ever made me feel seen. The knock came softly. Sweetheart. My mother called, her voice already dressed in politeness. Are you awake? Yes. I answered, though I felt like I had never truly woken up. She entered without waiting. She always did. Her eyes scanned the room first, then settled on me. For a brief second, I saw something flicker there. Something fragile, almost human. But it disappeared behind composure. It's a beautiful day, she said. I nodded. She came closer and sat at the edge of the bed. The mattress dipped under her weight, and I felt myself sliding toward inevitability. You understand why this is important, she whispered, as if the walls were capable of betrayal. I had memorized this conversation weeks ago. Yes, Mom. Your father has worked his entire life for that company. One bad year, one partnership that went wrong, and everything, she swallowed. Everything could be taken away. I know. Their family is powerful. They're willing to merge assets. They'll clear the debts. I finished the sentence in my mind. In exchange for me, she reached for my hand. Her fingers were cold. He's a good man. I almost laughed at the simplicity of that statement. He was a good man. Just not my man. Across town, perhaps at that very moment, the only man I had ever loved was probably waking up too. Maybe he was staring at his ceiling, just like I had, wondering what version of me would walk down that aisle. Maybe he was hoping I would run. The thought made my chest ache so violently, I had to look away from my mother. I'll be ready, I said quietly. She smiled, relieved. The house transformed quickly after that. stylists arrived. Makeup cases opened like treasure chests. The dress was unzipped from its protective cover with reverence, as if it held magic inside it. It didn't. It was white, intricate, expensive. It felt like armor. As they laced me into it, pulling the strings tighter and tighter, I felt my breathing shorten. My reflection in the mirror looked ethereal. Pale. Beautiful. Unrecognizable. "You look stunning," one of the stylists breathed. I studied the girl staring back at me. Her eyes were glossy but dry. Her lips curved obediently. She looked like someone who had made peace with something. But I hadn't. The church was already filling when we arrived. The doors stood open, sunlight pouring in, illuminating polished wood, and rows of people dressed in celebration. Everyone was smiling. They didn't know they were attending a transaction. I stepped out of the car slowly. Cameras flashed. The veil fluttered in the wind like it was trying to escape my shoulders. My father stood at the entrance, waiting for me. He looked older than he had last year. Stress had carved new lines into his face. His eyes softened when he saw me, but beneath that softness was desperation. "You look perfect," he said. Voice thick. I wanted to tell him that perfection is a cage. Instead, I slipped my hand into his arm. "Are you sure?" he whispered, so low only I could hear. The question startled me. He hadn't asked that before. I looked at him carefully. For the first time, I saw fear. Not of bankruptcy. Not of scandal. But of losing me in a way that money couldn't measure. And for one trembling second, I considered it. Running. Destroying the arrangement. Letting everything fall apart. But then I pictured the headlines. The lawsuits. The humiliation. The way my father would crumble under the weight of it all. And I chose him. "I'm sure." I lied. The music began. Each step down the aisle felt like walking deeper into water. Applause blurred into a distant hum. Faces passed by in slow motion. I couldn't focus on anyone. Until I saw him. At the altar. My groom. He stood tall, composed, dressed in a tailored suit that probably cost more than my first car. His expression was calm, almost unreadable. But his eyes were searching mine. Not with love. With assessment. As if confirming the contract had arrived intact. When I reached him, my father placed my hand into his. The contact was warm. Firm. Professional. The officiant began to speak about unity and destiny. About love and commitment. I felt detached from my own body, like I was watching a film of someone else's life. And then, through the open church doors, beyond the guests and the flowers and the orchestrated perfection, I saw him. Standing outside. He hadn't come in. He stood at a distance, hands in his pockets, eyes fixed on me. My heart stopped. He looked thinner, tired. But he was there. He had come. For a moment, the world narrowed to just us. No music. No vows. No expectations. Just the silent question in his eyes. "Come with me." My breath hitched. The officiant asked me to repeat the vows. I couldn't hear the words. All I could hear was my own heartbeat. and the quiet breaking of something that would never heal. "I do," I said. The words left my mouth like a betrayal. Outside, he closed his eyes, and I felt myself disappear. The ring slid onto my finger like a promise I didn't make. Applause erupted around us, loud and joyful, crashing like waves against a shore that had already eroded. My husband leaned forward and kissed me softly. His lips were warm and polite, lingering just long enough to satisfy the audience. It felt like being sealed inside glass. When he pulled away, he searched my face again. "Are you all right?" he murmured, so quietly it almost sounded kind. "Yes," I said automatically. I did not look toward the doors again. I couldn't. If I did, I might run. The ceremony dissolved into congratulations and camera flashes. Strangers hugged me as though I had achieved something monumental. Women whispered about the beauty of the dress. Men shook my husband's hand with approving nods, as if welcoming him into an elite circle. Or perhaps welcoming me into a cage. I smiled until my cheeks trembled. At one point, my father pulled me into his arms. His embrace was tight, grateful. His voice broke against my hair. "You saved us," he whispered. The words sank deep. Not, "I love you." Not, "I'm proud of you." "Oh, you saved us." I closed my eyes and let him believe that made it worth it. The reception hall glittered with chandeliers and crystal. Gold accents caught the light. A string quartet played something soft and romantic near the balcony doors. Beyond them, the sky had turned pale blue, fading toward evening. I wondered if he was still out there, or if he had finally walked away. My husband, Daniel, kept a steady hand at the small of my back as we entered. It was a practiced gesture. Protective. Claiming. Daniel Whitmore. The heir to a financial empire that could swallow my father's failing company whole. The solution to everything. He leaned down slightly as we greeted another investor. "You're doing very well," he said under his breath. I stiffened at the phrasing. "Thank you," I replied. He studied me for half a second longer than necessary. There was something unreadable in his gaze. Not cruelty, not warmth. Calculation. As the evening unfolded, speeches began. My mother cried delicately into a silk handkerchief while recounting my childhood. She painted me as gentle, loyal, selfless. The irony pressed against my ribs. Daniel's father stood next. Tall, commanding, with a voice that carried easily across the room. "This union," he said, lifting his glass, "represents strength. Partnership. The merging of two legacies. Not two hearts. Legacies." The room applauded again. I caught Daniel's expression during his father's speech. For a flicker of a moment, something hardened in his jaw. His fingers tightened around his champagne glass. Then it was gone. It was my turn. I rose slowly, feeling every eye follow me. The microphone felt heavier than it should. I had written something safe, something expected. But when I looked at the sea of faces, smiling, unaware, I couldn't remember any of it. My voice faltered. Daniel stood beside me, close enough that our shoulders brushed. I thought about love, about quiet coffee shops, and shared umbrellas and laughter that didn't need an audience. I thought about hands intertwined for no reason at all. And then I thought about contracts. My parents taught me that family means sacrifice. I began carefully. That sometimes love isn't loud. It isn't dramatic. It's steady. It's responsibility. The words tasted bitter. I hope, I continued, forcing my voice not to shake, that this marriage will be built on respect, on trust, and on choosing each other, even when it's difficult. Choosing each other. I didn't look at the doors. When I finished, polite applause filled the room again. Daniel leaned toward me slightly. That was honest, he said. There was a subtle emphasis on the last word. Our first dance came too quickly. The lights dimmed, leaving only a soft golden glow around us. The music swelled, slow and romantic, designed to make people believe in forever. Daniel placed one hand at my waist and took my other in his. He moved confidently, guiding me across the floor with practiced grace. You're very tense, he observed quietly. I yesed. His hand pressed slightly firmer against my back, not painfully, but enough to remind me he was there. You can relax, he added. This is the easy part. I met his eyes. And what's the hard part? A faint smile curved his lips, but it didn't reach his eyes. After tonight, something in my stomach dropped. We danced in silence for a while. I became aware of how perfectly we must look. Synchronized, elegant, composed. A power couple already. You know, Daniel said softly, you had a choice. The words sliced through me. I stared at him. Did I? Wes. His gaze held mine steadily. You could have refused and let my family collapse. That wasn't your burden to carry. It became mine. His expression shifted then, something like regret flickering through. I didn't ask for this either, he admitted. That surprised me. Then why agree? He hesitated, just briefly. Because sometimes maintaining an empire requires personal compromise. So I was a compromise. We continued to move as the music carried us in slow circles. Do you love someone else? He asked suddenly. The question stole the air from my lungs. I didn't answer. He didn't look angry. He looked curious, almost tired. I saw the way you looked at the doors. He continued quietly. My heart pounded so loudly I was certain he could hear it. Yes, I whispered. It was the first honest word I had spoken all day. He absorbed that without visible reaction. Is he here? I swallowed. He was. Daniel nodded once, almost thoughtfully. And yet, he said, guiding me into a gentle turn. You're here with me. The song neared its end. Applause began to build again. Yes, I said. The music faded. People cheered. Daniel leaned in close enough that his lips brushed my ear. Then let's make this worth what it cost, he murmured. I didn't know whether that was a threat or a promise. Later, as the night thinned and guests began to leave, I finally found a moment alone. I slipped out onto the balcony. The cool night air, wrapping around me like relief. The city lights shimmered below, distant and indifferent. For a heartbeat, I allowed myself to hope he might still be there. He wasn't. Only silence remained. I gripped the railing and let the tears come. Quiet, controlled, careful not to smudge the makeup that had taken hours to perfect. "I'm sorry," I whispered into the night. I didn't know who I was apologizing to anymore. Behind me, the balcony door slid open. I didn't turn around. Footsteps approached slowly. Daniel stopped a few feet away. "You'll catch a cold," he said, not unkindly. "I doubt that's the worst thing that could happen tonight." A pause. "You're grieving?" he observed. Yes. For him. For myself. The honesty hung between us. Daniel stepped closer, standing beside me now. Both of us looking out over the city, as if it could offer answers. "We don't have to pretend when we're alone," he said after a moment. I finally looked at him. In the softer light, without the crowd, he looked less imposing. More human. "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means," he said quietly, "that I know this isn't a love story." His eyes met mine steadily. "It's a deal." The words did not echo. They settled. Cold. Final. Clean. For a moment, I thought I might shatter from the bluntness of it. But instead, something inside me steadied. Perhaps because hearing it aloud made the illusion unnecessary. There would be no pretending between us, no rehearsed romance when the doors were closed. I turned back toward the city lights. "And what exactly are the terms?" I asked quietly. Daniel exhaled slowly, as though he had expected that question. "Publicly," he began, his voice calm and measured. "We are devoted. Untouchable. No scandals. No visible fractures. Our families get stability. The markets get confidence. And privately," a slight pause. "Privately, we give each other space." I let out a soft, humorless breath. Space. Yes. For how long? His jaw tightened faintly. As long as necessary. Unnecessary. The words stretched into something indefinite. "You don't want children immediately," he added carefully. "Neither do I. That buys us time." Time for what? To adjust. To forget. To become strangers who share a bed. I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly aware of how exposed I felt in the open night air. "Do you love someone?" I asked before I could stop myself. Daniel didn't answer right away. "That's not relevant," he said finally. "That's not what I asked." His gaze shifted slightly, not evasive, but guarded. "I did," he admitted. Past tense. The silence between us deepened. "And," I pressed. "And she didn't fit into this world." I almost laughed at the cruelty of that phrasing. Didn't fit. Like a misplaced object. "She left?" I asked. "No," he said evenly. "I let her go." Something about that confession unsettled me more than I expected. Because sometimes love is a liability. There it was again. Transactional language, even applied to the heart. And am I a liability? I asked. His eyes met mine fully then. No, he said. You're an asset. The word struck harder than if he had meant it as an insult. I nodded slowly. Of course I am. The balcony doors slid open again, and laughter spilled out from inside. Someone called our names. The world was waiting for us to return to our performance. Daniel extended his hand to me. Shall we? He asked. I stared at his hand. Strong. Steady. Unemotional. This was my life now. I placed my fingers in his. The night ended in a blur of goodbyes and final toasts. Eventually, we were escorted to the car that would take us to the hotel, where the bridal suite had been prepared. Prepared. As if intimacy could be staged like a banquet. The drive was quiet. I stared out the window at the city, passing by in streaks of gold and shadow. My reflection hovered faintly against the glass. A bride in white, eyes hollowed by something invisible. Daniel sat beside me, his posture relaxed, one arm resting on the seat. He did not attempt small talk. For that, I was grateful. When we arrived, the hotel staff greeted us with rehearsed enthusiasm. Rose petals lined the path toward the elevator. Someone handed us a key card, as though it were sacred. Inside the elevator, the silence grew heavier. We stood side by side, not touching. The doors opened to the penthouse suite. Candles flickered along the walls. Champagne chilled in a silver bucket. The bed was enormous, draped in white linens that looked too pristine to disturb. I stopped just inside the doorway. The reality of it all pressed in at once. Daniel stepped inside fully and loosened his tie. You can relax, he said, his voice steady. There's no audience here. I didn't move. He watched me for a moment. I'm not going to force anything, he added. The tension in my shoulders eased slightly, though I hated that it had been there at all. Thank you, I whispered. He nodded once and walked toward the small, sitting area near the windows. You can take the bedroom, he said. I'll stay out here. That's not necessary. It is. I studied him carefully. Why? I asked. Because, he said quietly, pouring himself a glass of water instead of champagne. I don't believe in taking what isn't willingly given. The statement lingered in the air. I had expected arrogance, control, possession. Instead, there was restraint. I don't hate you, I said suddenly. His lips curved faintly. That's a promising start. My throat tightened. I don't know how to turn off what I feel. I'm not asking you to. That surprised me. Then what are you asking? He leaned back against the counter, looking at me with something almost contemplative. I'm asking you to survive this with me, he said. Survive. Not enjoy. Not cherish. Survive. A strange sense of solidarity flickered between us then. Two people bound by expectations, neither of us fully chose. I saw him. Daniel said after a moment. The words sent a shock through me. When? I asked, barely breathing. Outside the church. I closed my eyes. Did he look like he was going to stop it? Daniel continued calmly. Yes, I whispered. And yet he didn't. I opened my eyes again. He wouldn't ruin my family, I said. He loved me too much for that. Daniel absorbed that quietly. That kind of love, he said after a pause, is rare. Wes? And dangerous. I didn't respond. He walked toward the bedroom door, stopping just short of it. Get some rest, he said. Tomorrow. The markets open with a new narrative. And just like that, romance dissolved into economics again. I stepped into the bedroom and closed the door behind me. The dress felt unbearable now. I carefully unzipped it, letting it fall to the floor in a soft white pool around my feet. In the mirror, I saw myself stripped of the ceremony. No veil, no crowd, no applause. Just a woman who had chosen duty over desire. I sat on the edge of the bed and finally allowed myself to think of him fully. His laugh. The way he would brush hair from my face without realizing he was doing it. The future we had once whispered about in the dark. I reached for my phone with trembling hands. There were no new messages. But I opened our last conversation anyway. Are you really going through with it? I stared at the question until my vision blurred. Then, slowly, I typed, yes. I hesitated. Then I added, I hope one day you understand. Well, my thumb hovered over send, and then I pressed it. The message delivered instantly. A moment later, 3 small dots appeared on the screen. He was typing. My heart pounded so violently. I thought it might break through my ribs. The dots disappeared. Then reappeared. Then disappeared again. And finally, a single message came through. I already do. I stared at the words until they lost their shape. They were gentle. Not angry. Not desperate. Just accepting. That hurt more than anything else could have. My hands trembled as I lowered the phone to my lap. I had expected resistance. A plea. Something that would give me a reason to fracture completely. But he understood. He understood that I had chosen my family. He understood that love, in the end, had not been enough. And somehow, that made the loss feel final. A soft knock sounded on the bedroom door. I quickly wiped at my cheeks before answering. Yes, it's me. Daniel's voice came through quiet. I need to make a call. It might be loud out here. I'll step onto the balcony. Okay. A footsteps crossed the suite. A door slid open. The faint murmur of his voice drifted through the walls, calm and authoritative. Business, even now. I lay back slowly against the pillows, still in my undergarments, staring up at the ceiling. The silence in the room pressed down on me. This was my first night as a married woman, and I had never felt more alone. My phone buzzed again. A new message. Not from him. From an unknown number. For a split second. My heart leapt irrationally. But when I opened it, The air left my lungs for a different reason. It was a photograph, taken outside the church, of me and Daniel at the altar. But in the corner of the frame, blurred, partially obscured, was him, standing in the doorway, watching. Beneath the image, a single line of text: "Congratulations. Hope the merger is worth it." Cold spread through my chest. Someone had seen. Someone knew. This wasn't a private sacrifice. It was visible. Documented. Another message followed. "You should tell your husband he wasn't the only bidder." My stomach dropped. Bidder. As if I were property. As if there had been an auction. I sat upright, pulse racing. This wasn't just cruelty. It was a threat. The bedroom door opened softly. Daniel stepped inside, loosening his cufflinks. He paused when he saw my expression. "What is it?" I hesitated. "Trust," I reminded myself. "Survival." I held out my phone. He crossed the room in a few long strides and took it from my hand. His face remained unreadable as he studied the screen. But I saw it. The tightening around his eyes. "Do you know the number?" he asked. "No." He handed the phone back to me carefully. "This won't be the last," he said calmly. The composure in his voice both steadied and unnerved me. "What does that mean?" I whispered. "It means," he replied, "that when powerful families make moves, people watch. And when there's blood in the water, some try to stir it." "Blood," I repeated faintly. "Our engagement was sudden," he continued. "The merger raised questions. There are competitors who would benefit from instability. And you think this is about business?" I asked. "I know it is." I looked down at the image again. "But that's him," I said softly. Daniel's gaze sharpened. "Did he speak to anyone? 'Cause a scene." "No." He just stood there. Daniel nodded once, as if confirming something in his mind. "Then he's not the threat." Relief and confusion tangled together inside me. "Then who?" "Someone who wants to make this marriage look illegitimate. Emotional. Weak." I almost laughed at the irony. "It is emotional," I said. "Yes." Daniel agreed quietly. "But not in the way they need it to be." He walked to the window and pulled the curtains slightly aside, staring out at the city lights below. "You need to block that number," he said after a moment. "And don't respond." I wasn't going to. He turned back to me. "From now on, anything unusual, you tell me immediately." The firmness in his tone wasn't domineering. It was protective. A strange warmth flickered in my chest before I could stop it. "I will," I said. He studied me for a second longer. "Get some sleep," he repeated gently. He left the room again, closing the door with quiet precision. I sat there in the dim light, phone still clutched in my hand. Was this what my life would be now? Smiling in public, guarded in private, under surveillance from shadows I couldn't see. I lay down again, but sleep didn't come. Instead, memories did. Rain-soaked afternoons under a shared umbrella. cheap takeout eaten on the floor of his apartment, because neither of us owned proper furniture. Yet, the way he used to trace invisible patterns on my wrist while talking about a future that felt reachable. He had never offered me wealth. Only himself. And somehow, that had felt like everything. My phone vibrated once more. My heart lurched. Another unknown number. Another message. You always did like security. Let's see how secure you really are. This time, attached to the text, was a document. A screenshot of financial records. My father's company. Highlighted in red were transactions from 2 years ago. Risky investments. Questionable transfers. My breath caught painfully. Those were the mistakes that had started all of this. If that information went public, my father would be ruined. Not just financially. Legally. The door opened again without knocking. Daniel must have seen my expression through the crack. What now? He asked sharply. I handed him the phone without speaking. He read quickly, eyes scanning with precision. For the first time that night, I saw something close to anger flash across his face. Who else has access to these records? He asked. I don't know. Your father? Yes, of course. Anyone outside the company? Why? I'm not sure. Daniel's jaw tightened. This isn't random harassment, he said. This is leverage. Against me. I whispered. Against us. The weight of that word settled differently now. Us. He handed the phone back to me and ran a hand through his hair, the first sign of visible strain. They're testing how we respond. He continued. If we panic, they escalate. And if we don't, they push harder. A fragile silence filled the room. I did this? I said suddenly. If I hadn't. No, he cut in firmly. I looked up at him, startled by the sharpness in his voice. You did not create your father's financial mistakes, he said. And you did not create corporate greed. But I walked into this. So did I. Our eyes locked. Something shifted in that moment. Not romance. Not affection. Alignment. Two people standing at the edge of something larger than either of us. What do we do? I asked quietly. Daniel stepped closer. Close enough that I could see the faint exhaustion beneath his composure. We don't break, he said. The simplicity of it steadied me, more than any reassurance could have. We'll hold the line. And if they release it anyway? His gaze softened, just slightly. Then we deal with it. Together. Together. The word felt unfamiliar on his lips, but not unwelcome. I looked down at the image again. The one from the church. Him in the doorway, watching me choose another life. A different kind of ache spread through me now. I had thought the worst pain would be losing love. I hadn't realized it might be watching the consequences of that choice unfold in real time. Daniel reached for my phone once more. Block both numbers, he said calmly. I'll have my security team trace them in the morning. Security team. Of course he had one. I did as he instructed, fingers still trembling slightly. When I looked up again, he was still standing there. "You should try to rest," he said, but there was something else in his expression now. Not calculation. Not assessment. Concern. "I'm sorry," I whispered, though I wasn't sure what I was apologizing for anymore. He shook his head once. "This is what we signed up for." I thought about the vows spoken hours earlier. About promises made under chandeliers and cameras. None of them had mentioned blackmail. None of them had mentioned fear. As he turned to leave the room again, I spoke without thinking. "Daniel." He paused in the doorway. "Yes." Was she worth it? The question surprised both of us. He didn't ask who I meant. "Yes," he said quietly. The honesty in that single word pierced through the walls between us. "Then why give her up?" I asked. His gaze drifted briefly toward the dark window beyond me. "Because loving her would have destroyed everything my family built." The room felt very small suddenly. "And loving him," I said slowly, "would have destroyed mine." Our eyes met one last time across the space between us. Two people who had sacrificed love at the same altar. Neither victorious, neither innocent. Daniel nodded once, almost imperceptibly. "Get some sleep," he repeated. The door closed softly behind him. And in the darkness, surrounded by silk sheets and silent threats, I finally understood. This marriage was not the end of something. It was the beginning of a war. This marriage was not the end of something. It was the beginning of a war. Sleep never came. The sky outside the curtains shifted slowly from black to a pale, indifferent gray. I lay awake, listening to the faint sounds of the city waking beneath us. Distant traffic, a siren somewhere far below, the hum of a world that did not know my life had split into before, and after in the span of a single night. My phone remained on the nightstand. Dark and silent now. The numbers were blocked. The messages saved. Evidence of a threat that felt less like a stranger and more like inevitability. I rose quietly and opened the bedroom door. Daniel was still awake. He sat at the small dining table near the windows, jacket removed, sleeves rolled up. Laptop open in front of him. The glow from the screen carved sharp lines into his face. A cup of coffee sat untouched by his hand. He looked up when he heard me. "You didn't sleep," he observed. "Neither did you." A faint exhale. "I had calls." "About this?" "Wes?" I stepped closer, wrapping my arms around myself against the morning chill. And someone attempted to access archived financial reports from your father's firm 3 weeks ago. His voice was steady, controlled. The breach was minor, contained. But now the timing is inconvenient. My throat tightened. So this was planned. Wes. He closed the laptop slowly. They expected resistance from your father. He continued. They didn't expect him to secure backing so quickly. Through you. Through us. That word again. Us. I walked toward the window, and pulled the curtain aside slightly. The city looked almost peaceful in daylight. Buildings washed in soft gold. People beginning their routines. No one aware of the quiet battles fought in penthouses above them. "Who is it?" I asked. Daniel joined me at the window. "There are 3 likely competitors," he said. 2 would benefit financially from destabilizing this merger. The third. He paused. The third what? The third had personal interest. I turned to him. In me. Wes. The word dropped like a stone into water. My mind scrambled backward, searching through faces at charity galas, corporate dinners, carefully orchestrated introductions over the years. There were conversations before you, Daniel said calmly. Informal proposals? Proposals. My stomach twisted. And my father. He declined them, quietly, because they weren't enough, because Daniel's family had offered more. More money, more power, more security. I swallowed hard. So this is revenge. Partially. And the rest? Strategy? The simplicity of his tone made the danger feel larger, not smaller. My phone buzzed again. Both of us froze. A new number. A new message. My hands felt numb as I opened it. A video this time. Taken from across the street outside the church. Him. The man I loved. Standing alone after the ceremony had ended. Watching guests leave. Watching me drive away. The camera zoomed in on his face. He looked devastated. Underneath the video, a messagey. Does your husband know how much you cost? My breath fractured. Daniel's jaw tightened as he watched over my shoulder. They're escalating, he said quietly. I couldn't look away from the screen. He had stayed. After I said, I do, he had stayed. Alone. And someone had recorded him like evidence of weakness. Delete it, Daniel said gently. I can't. They want you emotional. I am emotional. His hand closed lightly around my wrist. Not restraining, just grounding. Then be emotional later, he said. Right now, be strategic. Something in his voice cut through the fog of grief. I looked up at him. What are you thinking? I asked. They assume you're fragile, he replied. They assume this marriage is hollow. That pressure will crack it. And if it doesn't, then the narrative fails. I stared at him, understanding dawning slowly. You want to fight back publicly. Wes. With what? A press release. New. His eyes held mine steadily. With truth. The word startled me. What truth? That this marriage was not forced. His expression remained firm. That it was chosen. My chest tightened. But it wasn't. He held my gaze. Wasn't it? I opened my mouth to argue. And stopped. No one had dragged me down that aisle. No one had chained my hands. I had walked. I had said the words. For my father. For stability. For survival. It had been a choice. A devastating one. But mine. Daniel released my wrist slowly. We give them nothing to twist, he said. No cracks. No visible regret. And him. I whispered before I could stop myself. His eyes flickered briefly. He is not part of this war, Daniel said evenly. Unless you pull him into it. The implication settled heavy in my lungs. If I reached out again, if I allowed emotion to spill into public view, he would become leverage. I looked back at the video one last time. Then, with shaking fingers, I deleted it. The screen went blank. Something inside me went blank with it. Daniel watched me carefully. That was necessary, he said. I know. Silence stretched between us. Will you regret this? He asked suddenly. The question was softer than I expected. I already do, I admitted. His expression didn't change. But regret isn't the same as doubt, I added. He studied me. Do you doubt it? I thought about my father's voice when he said you saved us. I thought about the fear in his eyes. I thought about the company that carried his life's work. And I thought about the man outside the church. The one who loved me enough not to stop me. I doubt love, I said finally. Not this. Daniel absorbed that in silence. After a long moment, he nodded. Then we moved forward. Hours later, the official photos from the wedding began circulating online. Perfect images. Smiling faces. Headlines about a powerful union and a promising future. Daniel's team released a carefully worded statement emphasizing partnership, mutual respect, shared vision. The markets responded positively. Stock prices rose. Investors relaxed. Publicly, we were untouchable. Privately, something fragile had hardened. That evening, we returned to the house that was now ours. It was enormous. Immaculate. Impersonal. Staff greeted us with quiet efficiency. When we were finally alone in the master bedroom, I stood in the center of the room and felt the weight of permanence settle over me. Daniel removed his watch and placed it on the dresser. It will quiet down, he said. You don't know that. No, he admitted. But we will adapt. I turned to face him fully. Why are you being kind? I asked. He looked genuinely surprised. Is that unusual? Wes. A faint, almost sad smile touched his mouth. I don't need to make this harder than it already is, he said. We're on the same side. The same side. I stepped closer, close enough to see the exhaustion he tried to hide. And if one day, I said carefully, I can't pretend anymore. His gaze didn't waver. Then we'll renegotiate. The words should have felt cold. Instead, it felt honest. I let out a slow breath. I don't know how to be your wife, I confessed. You don't have to know tonight. And tomorrow. Tomorrow, he said. We start learning. A fragile understanding settled between us. Not romance. Not passion. But something steadier. A partnership forged not from affection, but from shared sacrifice. Later, as I stood alone at the window, looking out over the darkened grounds, my phone buzzed one last time. Not an unknown number. His name. My heart stuttered painfully. I opened the message. I won't contact you again. Not because I don't love you, but because I do. The tears came quietly. No hysteria. No collapse. Just a slow, steady grief. I typed back only 2 words. Be happy. The message showed as delivered. No dots appeared this time. No response. I set the phone down gently. Behind me, I felt Daniel's presence in the doorway, though he didn't speak. I didn't turn around. Outside, the night stretched wide and indifferent. Inside, I stood between 2 lives, one chosen by love, the other by duty. Love had let me go. Duty had taken my hand. And as I wiped the last of my tears and faced the man who was now my husband, I understood something with painful clarity. My wedding had been a deal, but the life that followed would be my decision.